The silence in the rain. The sky over the valley didn't just darken, it bruised. A sick, unnatural shade of violet-black swallowed the fading afternoon sun, casting the historic half-timbered houses into deep shadow. 14-year-old Elias broke into a sprint, his sneakers slapping against the damp cobblestones. The air was thick, heavy with the sharp metallic scent of ozone and impending violence. The town's warning sirens hadn't even finished their first mechanical wail before the wind hit. It wasn't a gust. It was a physical wall of force. Elias threw himself into the recessed stone archway of a closed bakery just as the street erupted. The roar was deafening, a high-pitched mechanical shriek like a jet engine tearing itself apart. He pressed his spine against the cold, iron-studded door, dragging his knees to his chest and clamping his hands over his ears. Above him, the town was being dismantled. The historic terracotta roof tiles of the neighbor's house began to rattle, then vibrate, and finally, they stripped away entirely. Thousands of heavy clay slabs were sucked into the churning vortex above, instantly transforming into lethal shrapnel. They rained down on the street in a devastating crossfire, shattering against the pavement and exploding into clouds of red dust and jagged shards. Elias squeezed his eyes shut, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The ground itself was vibrating. A sickening screech of metal scraping against stone forced his eyes open. Just 20 yards away, parked along the curb, was a heavy silver station wagon. The wind had caught its undercarriage. Elias watched in frozen, breathless horror as the rear tires lifted off the asphalt. The 2-ton vehicle shuddered violently, protesting against the impossible physics of the storm. Then, with a massive heave, the car was ripped from the earth. It tumbled end over end into the bruised sky, its headlights flashing wildly in the gloom before it vanished into the torrential rain, swallowed by the clouds. The sheer, apocalyptic scale of the destruction was paralyzing. Elias couldn't think. He couldn't scream. He could only watch the violent end of the world from his tiny stone sanctuary. Then the world broke. It happened in the span of a single heartbeat. The deafening roar of the wind, the shattering of clay, the torrential drum of the rain. It all simply cut out. It wasn't that the storm had stopped. Elias could still see the debris whipping violently through the air. He could still see the rain slashing sideways in brutal sheets. But the noise was gone, replaced by a suffocating, pressurized silence, as if he had suddenly been submerged deep underwater. With the silence came the cold. The heavy, humid summer air vanished, replaced by an arctic, bone-deep freeze. Elias let out a trembling gasp, his breath blooming into a thick cloud of white mist in the sudden winter. He slowly lowered his hands from his ears, his fingers numb. Standing in the dead center of the flooded, shattered intersection was a figure. It was a tall man, dressed in a mud-stained, dark wool trench coat that looked decades out of time. But what paralyzed Elias wasn't the clothes, it was the physics of the entity. The violent cyclonic wind was tearing the street apart around him, yet not a single fold of the man's coat moved. The torrential rain was falling straight through his shoulders, splashing against the cobblestones beneath his boots as if he were nothing but a projection of light. He stood in perfect, unnatural stillness amidst the roaring chaos. Slowly, the figure turned its head. Its skin was the pale, translucent gray of dirty ice, but it was the eyes that made Elias's blood run cold. Two hollow, pitch-black voids that seemed to radiate the freezing temperature flooding the alleyway. The storm raged violently around them, tearing the town apart, but the ghost didn't care. Its empty, dark gaze locked flawlessly through the rain, through the darkness, and directly into Elias's eyes. The figure raised a single, pale finger, pointing straight at the archway, and waited.